and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and this is my O-positive sub-special blood bag, Matt Freeman. Witness me, blood bag!
I sure hope this podcast is shiny and chrome, Scott.
This week on the show, we are doing another one of our monthly Council of Doof episodes.
Once a month, those individuals that donate to us on Patreon at the Doof Warrior level or above, our Council of Doof, will get to collectively decide on a movie for the community to consider for entrance into the canon. Scott and I then, and maybe some guests, will meet, talk about the movie, and then present our case for why it should or should not be admitted.
But as always, we are leaving the final decision up to you guys. And by you guys, we always get some confusion on this. So by you guys, I mean everyone listening to this right now. Mm-hmm. We are the voting for whether this thing gets into the canon is not restricted to just our council. Our council nominates the film, and you, the listener, gets to vote on it. So stick around and listen to our arguments, and then find the link in the show notes right in whatever device you're listening to right now. And go over there, click, it sends you to our Patreon account for a open Patreon. All you have to do is have an account, and you click yes or no, and that's how you vote. So Matt, what has the council brought to us today?
This week, the council has elected the 2015 film Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yep.
For some reason, I thought we had done an episode on this film already. I could have sworn we did. And I went through our backlog today, and we didn't. We did not do an episode on this movie. I think we've talked about it on like year-end lists and decade-end lists and that kind of stuff, but we've never done a full deep dive episode on it. So this was one I was very much looking forward to.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like we've talked about it, but I think that it was just in snippets here and there.
Yeah. And as such, we're not talking about anything else. We've been looking forward to this for so long. This is all the episode is. We're just talking about Mad Max Fury Road. And of course, there will be spoilers. So let's just get right into it, huh? Let's talk about 2015's Mad Max Fury Road.
It is by my hand. You will rise from the ashes of this world.
We are not things. We are not things.
Where is she taking them? I want them back! They're my property!
Matt, what is this movie about?
This movie is about, in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, a woman rebels against a tyrannical ruler in search for her homeland with the aid of a group of female prisoners, a psychotic worshiper, and a drifter named Max.
This movie was written by George Miller, Brandon McCarthy, and Nick Lathoris, and directed, of course, by George Miller, the incomparable George Miller. Matt, wow, where do we begin? Where do we begin on this movie?
Yeah, I mean, basically what you do is you just make a list of all of the elements of filmmaking and storytelling, and then you just talk about how it excels at all of the things on that list.
Yeah. I mean, I probably overuse the word masterpiece sometimes. I call movies masterpieces that probably aren't, but I genuinely think this is a masterpiece under the strictest definition of what that word means. Mm-hmm. I think, to me, when I think of what makes a masterpiece film, it is a movie that works on every single level, that every single part of it is working at its optimal level. There are no perfect movies, right? But I think this is damn near close. Everything about this movie is incredible. Every part of it, every single part.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, other than just digging into all of the parts of it, I don't know what else to say other than I agree. I think maybe one interesting thing to say to preface for me is like, I think the first time I watched this movie, I had quite a bad headache, which I think like I watched it and I was like, yeah, that was really good, but like it is not a movie that you want to be watching when you have a headache. So I probably had a much lower like I knew it was good, but I don't think I was really taking it in completely. And since that viewing, I don't think I've watched it many times. And so this time that I watched it just before talking about it today, may have been like the second or third time that I've seen it.
Oh gosh.
And so that gave like, I was like, oh my God, this movie's way better than I even remembered. Yeah, so that was cool to discover. Like I knew it was great, but it's really exceptional.
Yeah, I do think it's one of those rare movies that gets better every time I watch it too. I think this is probably it's the first time in a while I've watched it. I think it was shocking to me to remind myself that this movie came out in 2015 because it does not seem like 5 years ago that this movie came out, but it is. But I don't get to rewatch movies as much as I want to. We have we have a lot of work to do, Matt. a lot of my watching time is spent watching things for the show, so I don't get to rewatch movies as much as I did before we had all these podcasts to do. So getting to do this was a real treat for me, and I haven't rewatched it in a few years now, and. Yeah, I like. It's just amazing. The attention to detail is so strong in this movie that you can pick something else up every time that you didn't see the last time.
Yeah, let's start there because
sure.
I think my remark walking out of this viewing was that every action movie director must have walked out of Fury Road and just thrown their director hat in the trash immediately. So like the action direction. Everything about the action, I think, is what really stands out. I mean, the movie's great on an actor level, a storytelling and story structure level, but like the thing that really pops, the thing that makes you realize you're watching something really unique, is the action direction. So that there are multiple lengthy action sequences that are just some of the most complex complex action sequences put to film ever. And they are all done in a way where there is frequent cutting, but in a way where your eye is always following the action. I think you probably know more about that than I do, actually. Just the pacing of the scenes is done perfectly. There's all sorts of tricks employed to techniques, I guess, not tricks, but techniques employed to make it so that you're following it along with it, and also it's just perfectly designed. I don't know what else to say. It's just perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that it really stands out to me is exactly what you were saying, but the way the action is shot always orients you in the scene. Like, this is a movie in which the scene is constantly moving, right? Basically, every action set piece involves forward movement. All the cars are going in one direction together. And meanwhile, cars are cutting across diagonals, trying to get in front of each other, trying to get behind each other, trying to cut across each other's bows, flipping over, getting destroyed, different types of cars, different techniques. Like we have to recognize some of the characters by their car alone sometimes, which is done through just phenomenal production design, which we'll get into later. But you're absolutely right that everything is clear. And I love to compare this to Michael Bay, which I don't want to shit on Michael Bay. I love Michael Bay. I have an irrational love of Michael Bay's movies, no matter how bad they are. But his action is almost by design confusing. By design, actually, that's too charitable. His action's confusing. It's hard to follow. There's too much happening on the screen. There are too many cuts. The cuts, and not only are there a lot of cuts, because it's true that there are a lot of cuts in Fury Road as well, but the cuts do not flow. They are not kinetic. They are confusing. You lose geography. You lose orientation. You don't know which way you're facing. You don't know which way the enemy is facing. You don't know what their goals are. You lose everything. And that is absolutely not the case here. All of that is constantly there. It doesn't matter which direction they're driving. It doesn't matter which action sequence it is, who's doing what. All of those goals are always realized. Always. There are, just the way in which, like, we see the cars, like, kind of swoop in from the sides and the weird pole people. I think what Miller does, trying to get as technical as I possibly can, because I'm definitely not an expert in this. I think what Miller does is he very smartly constructs every scene where this seems like common sense, but so many directors don't do it, where the focal point of the scene, the thing he wants you to pay attention to, is dead center in the frame. No matter how quickly things are moving, how many things are flying across the frame, he always orients on the exact center of the frame. So it always gives you a clear place to look. You don't have, like, a lot of times in movies, especially when you're watching them on the big screen, I think, like, so much is happening on the screen and you can't take the whole screen in, that your head is kind of moving around a lot, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, and you're worried about missing things. I never had that experience in this movie. I always felt comfortable that the most important thing is right there. It's right there in the middle. Just follow the middle of the screen and you'll follow the action of the movie. You'll follow the stakes. You'll follow the drama. It's all there.
And I think,
brilliant.
I mean, I think that once they commit to that becomes a thing with incredible power, because, for example, one trick that you'll see a million times in many action movies, but this one included, is character suddenly looks in a direction, cut to either showing what they're seeing, or cut to like something approaching from that direction, seen from the perspective of that thing, or something like that, right? And if you know that your eyes are always supposed to be basically cueing on what's in the middle of the screen, then the director here knows, like, all right, well, then we're going to put Max suddenly jerking his head around to look behind him in the middle of the screen. And then that's your cue to prime your brain to know, all right, next thing that happens is going to be one of those cuts where we see what's coming, right? Mm-hmm. And you're exactly right that, like, if you weren't in the middle of the screen, there's just a little bit more processing that you have to do, a little bit more eyes flipping around the actual physical screen that you have to do. But I think it's I don't know if they literally innovated this technique, but I think like having done so, if anybody ever hands me a bag of money and tells me to make an action movie, I'm just like, well, I don't know anything I'm doing, but I'm definitely going to use that middle of the screen trick, because I feel like you just get so much mileage out of that. Totally.
It's wonderful. I don't know how much more, like, I feel like I could talk about the action for an hour, but I don't want to just go into, like, this part was cool, this part was cool, because it's all cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other cool thing, which, I mean, it's not like, I don't think we're going to be breaking any new ground in this conversation necessarily, but like the other thing about the movie that is cool is they do use a lot of practical effects. They also use a lot of CGI, and this is, to me, like, the coolest example of how it's integrated, because it's always shot in the way that makes you think, oh, this is definitely practical, I think, like, one of the things people react to and complain about when they say that, oh, CGI is overused, is that actually there is this tendency in CGI, when you're making a film with CGI, to just, like, zoom out and show everything that's happening, show the dinosaurs chasing the car off the cliff in, like, this giant wide shot, because, damn it, you have the resources to make that image, and it looks cool. And the thing is, it does look cool, but it's always going to be way more dramatic to, like, be in the car with the characters screaming and showing their faces, and then showing them looking over their shoulder, and then showing the dinosaur lunging up behind them, right? I mean, literally, Jurassic Park did this, and they were, they broke ground, and then I think people kind of forgot those lessons over time. And this is a great movie to point to and be like, this is how you do this, because it's integrated perfectly. I know that there are plenty of movies that do it well. I'm just saying this is a good example, and and I honestly have no idea what is CGI and what isn't, and I probably don't want to know, because whenever I learn that information, it ruins the movie for me.
I mean, the honest truth is every single scene is a little bit of both. Every single one. I think there's CGI in just about every single shot in this movie. And that's just like, I think CGI sometimes gets a bum rap because so many films do it poorly, right? Like there are so many movies out there who just do exactly what you were talking about, which do just CGI everything, and it makes things kind of flat and lifeless. I think like, and we've kind of put practical effects on a pedestal because of this. We've kind of swung too far back the other way. We're like, practical effects or death. And I think the real sweet spot is a marriage between the two. And I think that's what this movie succeeds in hugely, because, like, one of the most one of the most incredible shots in the entire movie is the slow motion car crash at the end of it, when the tanker crashes into the or when he flips the tanker and everything crashes in and collapses the thing.
Yeah.
I think that is amazing, and it is practical. They really crashed that truck, and they really set it up to where all the little pieces of the car are flying out. Now, of course, they added CGI to that, right? They accentuated some of the beats. I think the guitar flying right into the middle of the screen was not practical. That is that is CGI. But I mean, I think that's a perfect example of how you can kind of marry these two concepts together and produce something incredible. And I think Miller knew that. Like, there's a way to get the tangible feel of real cars driving on real dirt and also being able to have the tools of the computer to make it look just a little bit better, a little bit bigger, a little bit more explosive. That's what this movie succeeds in, I think, fundamentally. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if like a way to think about this is to imagine George Miller making these other Mad Max movies, 40 years ago or whatever. Was it literally 40 years ago?
79. So yeah. Fuck.
Making these movies 40 years ago and being like knowing exactly in his mind what he wants to do and being like, all right, well, I'm not going to be able to do that exactly, but I can do this and get pretty close. And making those movies that kind of with that mental frame of like knowing what he wanted, knowing how it should look, getting as close to that as possible given the tools at his disposal. And then, years and years later, this really high tier CGI comes along. He gets the opportunity to basically make another Mad Max movie, and he's just like, oh, okay, I know what to do with this. Like he's just folding it into his existing process, which he's developed over a long career, and he knocks it out of the park, right? I think that like realizing this isn't like some random fluke. Like, this is a guy who maybe wanted to make this movie his whole life in a certain sense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing to me is normally my default reaction when I hear someone like, now with the power of computers, the sky is the limit type of thing, my reaction is to be like, uh-oh.
Yeah, right.
Because I think limitations breed creativity. Like, actually the PlayStation 5 reveal happened earlier this afternoon, and one of the first things they said was, when we used to design games, it would always be a struggle between what we wanted to do and what we were able to do. And they were like, and now with PS5, that's finally gone, which is, I mean, not true. That's that's a lie. Right. But my reaction to that was like, I don't think that's going to make good games. So sometimes, but I do think this movie is a testament to that not being true, that sometimes the sky being the limit does breed creativity in a very specific kind of way. And I think it's because of that marriage with practical effects. And I think I think that's your limitation, right? Like, we want to do this shot and I want to do it practically. How can we do that? How can we and that's your built-in limitation. Like, I want to crash this giant fucking truck. How can I do that practically and then enhance it with CGI? And I think that is an interesting challenge. And I think that's what Miller wanted to do. And I think that's where these movie making techniques can be used to their fullest to make a masterpiece. Yeah. We've kind of circled around this topic a few times, but I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't think this is necessarily technically true, but it seems like most of what's in the foreground tends to be practical. And then the background tends to be
sure.
kind of flavor, or you could even literally say what's in the middle of the frame tends to be practical, and what's on the outside of the frame tends to be CGI. And I think that also works well because, like, I think people are actually pretty good at sort of subliminally noticing when something is just slightly off. But again, if you've trained the viewer, keep your eyes in the middle of the frame. That's where the important stuff is happening. The rest is just there to sort of support that. Then, you put your slightly less polished. I mean, obviously CGI is amazing now, but you put all that stuff around the edges where you're not looking directly at it in all likelihood. So that's cool.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think we also have to say, like, this doesn't really count as CGI in my mind, but like all the color grading and color correcting and that makes it have the very like vibrant colors. It's like the bright browns, right? It's not like none of the colors in this movie are dull. This is a movie that takes place in a desert, and yet all the colors really pop because it's not just brown. It's like this kind of bright orangey brown. This is all done with computer graphics. This is all color grading.
Yeah, I wanted to
in a computer.
I had a question. Like, why is Max like yellow for the first half of the movie? Because at first I was like, is that just a mistake? And then I was like, well, he only really gets that way after they start taking his blood, and then he kind of goes back to normal later. So, like, was he like jaundiced or something? And I looked up.
He might have been a little jaundiced. Yeah,
because like I looked up, like, do people get jaundiced after they give a ton of blood? I couldn't find any evidence for that, but I don't know. It popped. That was like the one thing I was noticing on this viewing. Like, he's really yellow. Minor thing.
I wonder if that's just part of the color grade. That's just an effect of the way the saturation they went for in the colors. I feel like probably, yeah, because like the movie goes out of its way to really like saturate those browns and those yellows in a way that I think makes them stand out a little more.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that that's all it is. And maybe I just happened to notice like the actual color value of his skin, whereas normally maybe you wouldn't notice that.
I mean, I will say that like it also helps support the idea that he's like covered in filth, like he's covered in dust. He's the same color as the landscape around him. So I think that's probably part of it.
And then as he becomes more human, he's cleaned of it, and then that's why he looks more normal later.
Indeed. Yeah.
So maybe that's a good hook to talk about the story.
Yeah. Oh my God. Here's the thing about this movie. Its story is really fucking good, and it's like I think one of the things that I love most about this film is I think the ability of a writer to honestly make you feel like you have just entered into a world and are only seeing like a quarter of it, right? That you have entered into an existing world and just give you like the way the movie teaches you about the rules and the what it's like to live in this world and what the roles are and what people do and what they don't do and how it's all like, it never holds your hand. It never says there's no exposition in this movie, really. It just kind of shows you by showing you, like literally. And I think that's really cool. Like I just felt like at every moment I was learning a little piece of this rich, fascinating world, but I was only getting a little piece of it, and I wasn't being explained to it. I was just seeing it. Like the way we when we see Immortan Joe, like we don't ever have to have a character say like, oh, he uses water to control the people. We just see him do it.
Right.
We don't really learn who the war boys are until much later in the movie, but we understand their dynamic with Joe. We understand like that these people like they just toss like the Half-Life war boys. We don't actually know what that means, but we like pick up on it pretty soon. It's like, oh, these are irradiated people that are dying,
right?
And he's kind of using this group of people as his hitmen, his army, like all this stuff, like all the like the bullet farm and Gastown. It's just like there's like we don't even know, like the movie never tells us what an Imperator is, right? Like Imperator Furiosa. What does that mean? Just some high rank. Like we don't need to know. We just know, oh, high rank in the organization, so it's a big deal when she betrays him.
Sure.
I think it's so inventive and cool in the ways it chooses to reveal this information to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mean, so some of that stuff, like the Imperator Furiosa, is like clearly Immortan Joe has crafted this pastiche of all of these like kind of warrior cultures and ancient cultures that have a lot of cachet with them to kind of make himself seem more like a god. And more shades of like ancient Rome and stuff like this. Or with the Norse, the Norse mythology built on, exactly, just mashing things in there in a very cynical way, like to intentionally create this godlike image for himself. Like that, I love that actually, because it is just showing like, yeah, this guy he's just using all of the tools from the autocrat's toolbook to build himself a cult of personality, and then and then throwing away the poor kids like garbage. But yeah, I agree completely. Like every molecule of each of the vehicles and the extras, or like the side characters, like the mayor of Gastown or whatever, where he's like, oh God, what's his story? That's kind of or
he's got like the metal nose, and then the bullet farm guy has like the bullet in his teeth.
Yeah.
Like that's just such like small touches.
Yeah.
But they really just add up. Like to this, like these are realized worlds and characters, and it's like this we're just getting a glimpse of this. Yep. This has existed before us and will exist after us, and we're just getting a glimpse.
Yeah. I agree. It's very well done mythology.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the specific, like the heart of the movie, the arc of basically, I mean, it's a complex plot, but it has a simple heart, and I think that's the trick, right? The simple heart is you got this loner Max, who the only way in which he's likable is that he's resourceful and a survivor, right? And he's actually just looking out for number one. He's going to leave the women in the desert after he escapes in the awesome sandstorm scene, and then he can't leave them in the desert, and so they distrust each other very intensely for a while, and then eventually him and Furiosa start to see eye to eye, and that's the heart. The heart is the friendship blooming between the two of them, and then there's a bunch of kind of other little hearts in the sense that various other characters have their own subplots, and that's also a good source of emotion. But I really just loved, especially on this viewing for some reason, the twists and turns and push and pull of their evolving friendship specifically.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the part, like the moment of the movie for me is when he is trying to fire the sniper rifle to take out that light, and he's missed twice, and he's trying to shoot, like he's got one more bullet trying to shoot, and he hands the gun off to her. And like she takes it, and then she rests the gun on his shoulder to take the shot, and that is literally like that is the moment where they finally come together.
And then shortly after that, he leaves with the gas can and says, if I'm not back, then leave without me.
Right.
And that's his first overture of like true trust and even willingness to sacrifice. Speaking of like narrative setup, they went out of their way to talk about the bullet counts and to have one of the women in the truck be like, there's only 3 bullets left for this one. Wave that gun visibly, right? So like it's really good. Setup and payoff mechanics.
There's so many amazing setups and payoffs, right? Like the knife hidden in the gear shift. Like I think like we see that he takes after he unhooks himself from the blood bag, he keeps the tubing, and the tubing comes into play later when he needs to transfuse. Like just the fact that he's a universal donor pays off in the end of the movie. For sure. I mean, that like the setup and payoff of this thing is so like every single beat is wonderful. I think like talking about cooperation, I think the other beat is redemption, right? Like the other big motif of this story is redemption. I mean, it's something that Furiosa literally says, that she's doing this for redemption. Like she's this person that was taken, kidnapped and taken away, and has spent her life, the last, I think 7,000 days, right? Which I think is like 20 years or something, has spent the last, and obviously getting up to the rank of Imperator means she's probably done some pretty heinous shit in her time, right? Like I don't think you succeed in this kind of organization without doing something terrible. And so giving these girls hope, taking them to the Greenland, taking them somewhere where they have something to live for again, is her form of redemption. And Max is literally haunted by his past failings, and so his act, his big final, like beginning of the third act decision to turn around or to go after them and tell them to face what's coming towards them is his act of redemption. And then Nux is, I think, my favorite arc of the movie actually is Nux's, because like he starts off with this kid who is completely indoctrinated into this whole thing, just totally like ready to die for his beliefs, and then he like by the end of it he's ready to, he still dies, right? Like that's the most fascinating thing about his arc to me, is like he ends the movie almost exactly where he begins, where he's willing to sacrifice his life for the thing he believes in. It's just the thing he believes in has fundamentally changed from the beginning to the end. It was all for glory and honor before, and now it's to protect the people he cares about, the person he's fallen in love with. It's, you know, a form of redemption, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's probably the character that I tend to think about when I think about this movie, actually, because I mean, Max is a great character, but Tom Hardy plays him in a very reserved fashion.
Yeah, I mean, he's quiet. He doesn't really talk.
Yeah, I mean, Furiosa is also like there's definitely depth and nuance, and the performance is great, but it's also a very like the two leads are basically two different stoic badasses of slightly different flavors, whereas Nux is like a crazy, you know, suicide bomber who realizes that his god is a false god, and and has a massive crisis of faith and falls in love, and you know, realizes that there's more to life, but also knows that his life is going to be short, and so he decides he's going to give it for something that he thinks has value going forward. I mean, I think that's great, because like this isn't about him going to Valhalla. This is about the people he cares about getting to go forward in the world.
Right. Like I think the sacrificial death at the beginning of the movie is do well here. It's all selfish, right? Like it's all self-motivated, right? Like I am trying to be impressive enough or be amazing enough to earn a spot in the afterlife. I mean, that's why like the line mediocre is so devastating to him, right? Because the whole point is to be impressive, to fascinating, and for people to see it. That's why the whole witness me line is here. Like you don't just want to die for the thing you believe in. You want people to see that you've done this. Yeah. And I think that's why one of my favorite scenes is still the moment with Immortan Joe where he like gives him the gun and gives him this great opportunity, and he's like, yes, I finally have it. And then he fucking trips because his chain gets caught in the grating of the top of his hanker and loses the gun. And like immediately after, like Miller didn't even hold that beat. It's like this super dramatic thing where for a second there you're kind of like, yeah, I hope he gets it. And you're like, wait a minute, no I don't. And then he just does this super embarrassing thing, and then is just so distraught by it, he doesn't even try anything else. He just goes to the back of the truck and hides until the redheaded wife finds him. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of did mention how there were a lot of small roles. Like I love how each of the wives is a distinct character. I mean, I don't remember their names because I don't think we spent enough time with each of them, but they all have their own little subplot, right? Like there's the more violent and sort of weapon smart one. There's the pregnant wife who you know, is sort of simultaneously the most idealistic and the bravest and the most willing to sacrifice herself.
I mean, we kind of learned that she is the one that motivated this whole thing, right? That she's the one that kind of probably approached Furiosa with this idea. Because I mean, I think we are told specifically that she is the one that wrote "We are not things" on the wall. Like when when the one wife is trying to go back because she thinks it's safer to go back, they're like, "What did she say? What did she say? We are not things." So I think yeah, she's kind of the leader of the wife group for sure. Yeah, and just dies in the most horribly cruel way ever. Which again is actually a setup, Matt, because the reason she dies is because she got hurt. She like Max shot her and her leg is bleeding and hurt, and that's why she trips trying to climb back into the car and slips and falls. Which again is just like everything that happens to these characters pays off in one way or another. Every little tiny thing.
I know. Like I think I am going to have to watch this a bunch more times, because this time was the first time that I noticed, I might be wrong about this, I don't think I am, that Furiosa, she grabs Actually, I don't think I have the physics of it even truly correct in my head. But basically, she grabs Immortan Joe's mask with her prosthetic arm, and then somehow involves a chain, and the consequence is that both his face mask and her prosthetic arm are ripped off completely. and for the rest of the movie, she doesn't have the arm. And so it's like that was a symbolic sacrifice on her part, which I thought was a really cool touch, you know?
Yeah, totally. I love that. There's so many bits like that.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Yeah. I mean, even Immortan's big muscle son is like a kind of sympathetic character. Like, like, well, his life that is clearly, I mean, he's obviously a villain and he's terrible, but also like you can imagine being like, I don't know.
I feel like he's been indoctrinated in the same way that everyone else has. I mean, he obviously benefits from the system.
Yeah.
Like he's enjoyed all the happiness and the qualities of life that nobody else gets. But yeah, I mean, he definitely like I had a brother and he was perfect in every way.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucking sad.
I think, I think that's exactly what it is that the acting is actually incredible. I don't know. I never really thought about it consciously, but like he's playing that role the way that person would actually be, instead of like a you know, an evil monster just who just wants to hurt people. Like,
sure,
he is you know, he loves his dad and Morton. He cares about his family. He kind of seems to feel some responsibility, but like, yeah, he's clearly a monster. But it's because it's almost like you're seeing like what happens when you take a person who has good qualities and you indoctrinate them, which I find much more compelling than just like, oh yeah, that's just a monster. You know, that's just he's bad. He's a bad guy. It'll be fun when he dies.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think we have to talk about the feminist angle on this movie. I think because I think it's so textual, like it's so obvious that like the recurring frame of who killed the world, right?
Yeah.
Like there these women have been like obviously are in this system which completely abuses them. They have no authority in their life. They have no agency at all. I mean, the five in particular literally are used as breeding stock, but they're just the ones we spend a lot of time with. It's very clear that like there's all the mothers up there just constantly getting breastfed or just getting milked for the milk that filled that entire fucking tanker. Can you fucking imagine? Yeah, I mean, this is an oppressive patriarchal society, and I think like obviously Immortan Joe is the person that created that society, but Rictus, his son, is the guy who is just maybe entirely ignorant to himself, benefiting from it in a way he never really understood. And obviously I'm adding complexity to a character that I don't think has that much, but I think you can make an argument that it's there under the surface for sure.
Yeah. I think so, because it was a choice to say like, all right, you're going to play this character as like basically you're earnest. Your character is earnest. Your character is not cynical and exploitative. That they are exploitative in the sense that that's the role in the world that they're taking on, but they don't see that, and that's way more interesting and a much, I think, sharper critique on society to say. I think it's true. The people who tend to be the most, you know, exploitative in the world are the ones who don't realize they're doing it. I think. I mean, and yeah, I mean, it's such a good, like the whole setting, if you will, is like a great lesson in turning theme into setting, right? Because like you said, like I don't know if it's really even physically possible to fill up a tanker truck with breast milk, like it's
that's a lot. That's a lot of boobs, man.
That's a lot of breast milk, and it doesn't flow. It doesn't flow quickly. I have kids. I know about this. Okay. So like, but like I know, like maybe the thought of like I don't think that's realistic. Like maybe that popped into my head while I was watching it, but I wasn't like, oh, that was lazy. I was like, okay, it's a symbol. It's a symbol for like we're literally exploiting motherhood and the female body to turn it into a thing that makes nutrients, like how we treat cattle's milk.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's like, it is literally like, that is the literal connection there. Like they are those mothers. And I think it's so fitting to me that the people that finally open the water for the citizens of the Citadel at the end are the for lack of a better term, cows that are being, that are being exploited that way. And they are basically like, we watch Furiosa herself does nothing except for kill Joe and they expose Joe as dead. It is really everyone else in the Citadel that then begins the revolution. Like it's the kids that let them down. It's the mothers that open up the floodgates for the water. It is like they are just a symbol that ignites this revolution, and the loss of Joe is a symbol that ignites this revolution. And I think that's really important too. That like they're showing the broad effect of these people coming together and working together to overthrow a terrible regime, and how that ripples out. And then Max fades away from it because he's still searching for his meaning. We haven't. I guess one of the things I do want to talk about is how this movie kind of lines up with the other ones, which is just kinda.
Yeah.
Have you seen the other 3 Mad Max movies? I can't remember.
No, I think I saw the first one, which is a lot more of a normal movie than I believe the other 2 are, or the other however many.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so like, it's basically Mel Gibson. What made him famous was, and in the first movie he loses his family. His family dies, and it drives him insane. Hence Mad Max, and he just kind of wanders the wasteland. And the next 2 movies are him just kind of wandering into encampments of people, and he decides to help them, and then leaves at the end of the movie. And this is, I think, fitting in that it has that same kind of structure. I think the difference is here where like the literal manifestations of his past, you know, like I love the touches of these random people who we don't know, like, and me having watched the other Mad Max movies, I can't tell you who those people are. I want to make the assumption that the kid he sees is one of the children from one of the earlier movies, but I can't say for sure, or his kid who dies at the beginning of the first movie, but she looked a little more wild than that. So I don't know. But the point is, I love that it is totally in line structurally with what all these other movies have been, but does not require you to know anything. I think they set up how the flashes of his past are working in such a perfect way that that you don't have to know anything, but it still feels like a Mad Max movie.
Yeah. I think my understanding of the story creation process is that they didn't really particularly care whether, you know, there was no attempt to be like, this one comes after the second one but before the third one, or like, no, it's just like, yeah, this is a movie in the Mad Max universe, and these are all just, you know, stories anyway, so we can do whatever we want. And I actually think that's kind of fun. I kind of wish other franchises would do that. Because yeah, I mean, this like the setting in this one definitely seems developed in a different direction than, okay, well, like I just said, I haven't seen anything but the first one. But like the first one seemed like a lot more of a straightforward, like this is sort of a realistic post-nuclear apocalypse world. And
I think the first one was like very soon after, right? Like where some segments of civilization still existed in ways that are recognizable to us. I think probably for literally budgetary reasons, nothing else. They had to do that. But they got progressively more like, it's like, kind of like we see society collapse as we go.
Yeah, we see it move on.
And we don't necessarily need this Mad Max to be the same one, right? Like Mad Max could be just the idea of the lone wanderer, the lone kind of off his gourd wanderer that appears in and out of different stories. Like it doesn't have to be the same character. And we don't even learn this guy's name until like the last moments of the movie, right? Like he doesn't tell anyone his name until the very, very, very end of the movie.
True. Yeah. It's really interesting to think about, right? Because I it's almost like by doing this, by intentionally fuzzing the boundaries and making it like, I don't know, maybe it's a different Max. It's like you Miller and the filmmakers have turned Mad Max from being a character into being an archetype, which is a pretty cool thing to have done, I think.
It is. Have you heard that a new movie's coming? I don't know how up you are on your Mad Max news.
I think you might have said that. I always put a like I'll believe it when I see it tag on things like that, just because you hear a lot of things in this world.
Sure.
But yeah, tell me more.
Well, I don't know how I feel about this. It's supposed to be a prequel about Furiosa, who is a character I love and I would love to see more of her. I just kind of like the concept of her past as this thing we only get to see little shades of, and not like we have to dive into it. Like, I feel like this movie will be like the how did she lose her arm movie, or was this just was she born this way? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. I don't know if it's the same storytelling team behind it, then I guess I have a degree of faith I'm willing to lend them. But
sure,
I do kind of share. You know, it's funny because I just got done saying like I like their willingness to just leave behind the restrictions of plot and continuity, and this is basically them being like about that continuity.
Yeah,
we need to have some of that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I think if I had to, the most charitable interpretation to me is that George Miller just fucking loves this character and just wants to do more with her, and has trouble seeing a movie that takes place after this one, but has a very easy path to seeing a movie that takes place when she's younger. And just because it's a prequel doesn't mean it has to have like some of the worst tendencies of prequels, which is like, we got to explain where everything comes from. How did she get the war rig?
Yeah.
How did she get the let's see her get her new arm. Let's see her get blah, blah, blah. Let's see the first time she puts the paint over the top of her head. Like,
let's show her.
Doesn't have to do that.
Set the kill switch code and put the knife in. Yeah, no.
Right.
I kind of hope it doesn't. I mean, I hope it's, I don't know. It probably will be.
I think I'm jaded by too many prequels, but just because some movies fall for those traps, I think this guy's a smarter director and writer than that. So
yeah, I think so.
Oh god, we got to talk about the music, man. The music. This is a soundtrack that I listen to all the time, and it's so good. It's so. I'm so bad at talking about music, Matt, but like, you get the feeling of a chase, of movement. Like, it's just kinetic in that way.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like an engine almost with it. It's there's the drumming. The drumming is a big part of it, right? I mean, it's actually unhummable, which I normally see as a problem with theme music, but in this case I think it works perfectly because of the kind of movie it is. And then it does actually become melodic in certain places, like where there's more character centric, like sacrifice oriented things happening, and less isn't this awesome. I don't know, there's so many great moments that are, I think, made even better by the music. Like, I definitely distinctly remember the scene with the scene where they first go into the storm, and I just being like, oh my god, this movie is like just I have no words for this. This is obscenely good.
It's one of the few moments in the movie where it really allows itself to just pull the camera back to a really, really, really wide shot to see the size of these tornadoes. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But like, I think everything matters in this movie. Like, every bit is used. Like, we're in this giant storm. We don't just see characters struggle through the storm. We see our characters use the storm. We see Furiosa force another car into the tornado. Like, everything has a purpose. Everything has a use. Like, every bit of this movie is used in the plot somehow, used to further everything.
Yeah.
I love it. I love, like, every car we see has a use, and there's a moment with each of them.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So I think the last note I have written down is like, I want to talk about like the weird, fun, ultra violent tone. I don't even know what to say other than like, isn't it just a weird tone that this movie has?
Yeah. I mean, it's violent and cruel, but silly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it employs slapstick humor a few times.
Yeah.
But it is also tragic and horrible. Yeah. I mean, I think it navigates through a lot of different tones throughout the course of it.
Yeah. It's just like, it goes places where you just don't expect it to. Like one image that, like, we watch a lot of violent movies. I'm pretty like jaded, but like an image that just like hurt my soul was the Bullet Town guy with his eyes like destroyed by glass. I was just like, oh my god, like you're not even happy that happened because it's so horrible.
But even that's played kind of for the laughs because he's kind of an absurd character.
Yeah,
who then like grabs some guns and just starts literally blindly firing on them while screaming.
But it's a weird laugh is the thing. Like I'm not that's it's this weird liminal space of like this is awful / this is funny. I mean, I'm all for dark humor, but this is just it goes so dark that like I'm not even laughing. I'm just like, that's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It definitely hit a weird spot on the tonal spectrum for me where I don't know if I can think of anything else that really hits the same spot.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean though. I mean, I think it to me strikes me. I think all these movies kind of navigate that tone, and it's kind of a George Miller tone as well because I think like Babe is a movie. Babe 2 Pig in the City was directed by George Miller. Don't know if you knew that. One of the greatest pig-based movies of all time.
Uh-huh.
And I think it is a movie with that similar kind of tone where it is serious and dark at moments and light and silly in other moments. And I think it's just the gamut. Like this is one of those movies that I think just encapsulates a lot of emotion. It's one of those experience movies where you feel a range of emotion while you're watching it. You're excited. You're sad, you're horrified, you're elated. It's just one of those films I think that it captures all of those things.
Sure.
I think that's why it works so well on me.
Yeah, it definitely varies it. Yeah, I was just trying to think of anything that reminded me of the same feeling, and what came to mind was the part in Terminator 2 where T-1000 is on the phone in the guise of his stepmother, and the stepfather keeps interrupting. And so she, stabs him through the face, and it's like, like that's the same idea that this movie kind of hits a few times, where it's like, oh, it's like funny, but you're disgusted.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah,
like you're simultaneous. I just think it's interesting, and I almost wonder if it's not being done like in a calculated way to put you in this position of feeling like part of me wants to laugh at that, and then a bigger part of me is disgusted that I think that's funny. But that doesn't change the fact that part of me still thinks it's funny. And like maybe he's, I don't know, pushing us to question our, I don't know, something about the nature of what we're witnessing. Or something.
That's an interesting angle that I think it'd be fun to kind of spend some time on there, because like the thing about this movie is this is like a car movie, right? Like this is chrome and muscle and car and going fast and driving and big explosions and violence. It is to be extremely gender normative right now, a dude movie. But it is also a movie that is about the ways in which men have subjugated and abused women, very explicitly. And I wonder if that is Miller's goal, is kind of like, here's all this dude stuff. Again, I'm being very broad here intentionally. Sure. I'm not saying that like if you like cars, that's a guy thing. I'm being intentionally broad here. But and bring them in, and then hey, let's examine this. This. Like, why is it cool to see people like take poles with explosives on the end of it and jump into another car while screaming after painting their mouth? Like, why is that cool? Are you happy about that?
Yeah, because you're right. Because he's actually directly mocking a lot of the things that he's simultaneously then using as a cool thing. Like,
sure,
the spraying silver spray paint in your mouth is ridiculous.
It is. It's totally ridiculous.
But like it's used a few times in the movie to the point where you're just kind of like, all right, I guess that's part of the setting. But like there's so much about the setting that is ridiculous. Like for example, the fact that they there's kind of a fetishizing of cars and speed and stuff in the culture in real life, right? And so this movie has the War Boys literally have all of their car steering wheels arranged on like an altar where they like reverently pick up the steering wheel as if it is like a holy relic. And they're going to go drive with it. So it's basically saying like, this is you almost, acting like this is holy and um, super important. I don't know. I have no problem with people liking cars.
No, I don't either. I don't either.
I don't mean it to come off wrong. It's just like I feel like the movie is doing multiple things with everything, and it's fun to poke around at it.
I think it's. I don't think the lesson of the movie is that people that are really into cars are bad. Definitely not. I do think it's using a way in which we take a traditionally and normatively masculine dominated hobby and kind of using that to explore patriarchal oppression is a really fascinating choice. Because I think that's absolutely what the movie is doing. Yeah, like the worship of chrome, the worship of these steering wheels, the worship of cars is something that the movie very explicitly constructs and then kind of deconstructs, because the whole point is this is all bullshit. That this is just the reason why Immortan Joe has built a society around cars is because it's convenient to his resource gathering.
Yeah.
Like, because we need people to protect our supply transports from the gas place and from the bullet place and from the water place. Like it's just a religion he's built out of practicality, and it's all kind of meaningless and bullshit because it's used as a pretense to completely subjugate these people. And Furiosa, I think, is the most fascinating character when looked through that lens, right? Because she is one that you could argue is flourishing in a society that is kind of built to put her or people like her like beneath everyone else. And she feels culpability for that and takes action for it.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. I think that's a fascinating lens to explore this whole movie from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love for someone more intelligent than I to do a whole feminist deep dive of this movie, because there's a lot here.
There's so much that I think one of the problems I'm having with this conversation is that I think I just need to pick one thing to drill down into, because I my mind keeps like skipping between like specific things that I think he might be doing.
Sure.
But the thing is, I do agree with you that like if you picked one thesis and you tried to really just support that thesis, you could go a really long way. I think. Yeah, I don't know that something you just said kind of spurred this, and it was just something that I was thinking about while watching the movie. That stuck out to me as particularly interesting is like Furiosa seems to have like this one war boy who is like her lieutenant.
Yeah,
and it just kind of fascinated me because there seems to be a degree of regret that she has to screw these guys over, because like they are her crew, you know?
Yeah, I find it very kind of sad, the confusion on his face.
Yes.
When he realizes, and then like the slow realization of what she's doing.
Right, exactly. Because like, you even do feel bad for them. Like they're the bad guys. They're
sure.
But also like the war boys are explicitly victims. Like the movie itself makes the point that they're victims. So it is just kind of tragic that, I mean, she's definitely trying to save as many people as she can, I guess you could say, and she knows she can't save them. But that's the tragic inevitability of it, is in order to save some, you've got to sacrifice some others. And you know, once again, I thought it was cool how like her lieutenant guy, he's a fully fleshed out character. There's nothing about him that screams like, oh, this guy's just an evil monster. The movie doesn't go out of its way to show him, stepping on a dog before,
right.
like he is a product of his circumstances, and he is duly, like you said, shocked and betrayed by her actions. And I think the movie is actually really good about doing that, about really the only person in the movie who you could really call just a complete monster, I think, is Joe.
And I think that's very intentional.
Yeah. I agree. Maybe the leaders of Gastown and Bullet Farm.
Yeah, they're pretty shitty too.
And I think that even makes sense, because it's like, well, they're basically just the same as him. They're people who've risen to the tops of their own rat piles by being, the most horrible around.
Yeah, Yeah, this is such a fascinating conversation, and I think the reason why there's so much here is because the movie is rooted in all these characters. Like, I think that's the thing that really is at the core of the film is these characters and the things they want and how the movie kind of turns around that. Like you said, the plot is very simple. Like it is a constant chase. Like, drive far away from place, realize the only hope is to drive back to the place, turn around, drive back. That's the plot. But yeah, I mean, each one of these characters is going through something. I love what you said about, we kind of moved away from it accidentally, but the way each one of the wives has like their whole life. Like they are like none of them is just a throwaway character. They all get something to do. They all have some interaction to have. I mean, one of them is literally like that she is so bought into it, so indoctrinated that she wants to go back. And we even get like a little arc for her, right? Like at the end she jumps back but then helps Furiosa, right? Yeah. I think that's her, right?
Yeah, I think the thing with her is that it seems like she's giving herself over but it's actually a ploy.
Right.
Unless
right. At the last time, I think the first time when she was running to be picked up by him again, I think she legitimately just wanted to go back.
I think the point of that scene is that you're supposed to be like, no, damn it, not now, because she's been set up to be the kind of person who would do that, and then it twists and she's actually, what's funny is like normally I can remember movies like pretty well. If I do say so myself, but like like so much happens in this movie. Like there's so many cuts that I actually have a hard time being like, wait a second, which character was that? Which is, it's all to the good, right? It's just it's one of the rare movies where I find myself, even after watching it multiple times, like I'm not really sure what happened there. When you're watching it makes perfect sense, obviously, but like you almost like can't store that much information coming in that fast.
Sure, because there's a lot of people and a lot of different interactions. I mean, I think my favorite is the blonde with the old woman with the seeds that you already kind of touched on.
Yeah,
I love that interaction. That woman dying that we've just met and have known for like 10 minutes in the movie is like the saddest thing in the world to me. Yeah. And I know basically nothing about her, but Miller understands that if you anchor her to a character we do care about, which is one of the wives that we've kind of gotten to know throughout the course of this movie, then her death becomes tragic because we're seeing it through the eyes of a person who's grown to care for her. And then that moment where she picks up the seeds before retreating is really, really powerful. It's just really smart screenwriting. It's just like really smart. Like every bit of it is anchored in character. Every bit of it. Everything that happens for a character choice reason. And it's really wonderful.
Yeah. I want to watch it again.
I can't believe, I feel like I haven't talked about this movie at all, and we've been talking for an hour, if you can believe it or not. So let's move on to the vote part of this. I personally can't think of a movie that deserves to be in this more than Mad Max Fury Road. I think we called it the best movie of the 2010s. This revisit has only strengthened that opinion, and definitely one of the greatest films of all time, undoubtedly.
For sure. Yeah, I would be amazed to hear someone's counter argument to that assertion.
Yeah. I mean, there are people that don't like this movie, and again, that's fine. I'm not going to tell people you're wrong, but you kind of are. But I like we did with Spider-Verse, I would agree. I would love to hear some people talk about maybe what didn't work for them in this movie, because I have heard some arguments for what didn't work for some people in this movie.
I mean,
I disagree with them, but that's fine.
I mean, I did say I had a headache the first time I watched it, and that probably has at least something to do with the fact that it's just so relentless. But like, I don't know. Like that's what it is, though. Yeah. I'm a big proponent of judging things on the merit of what they are and not what they're not. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So but sure. I'm sure it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's clearly masterfully made. Like you said, it's a masterpiece. I don't really get Picasso, but I can understand when something is a masterpiece if that parallel makes any sense.
It does. I think this is one of those rare masterpieces that I both can tell is a masterpiece and I get it, which is just, that makes it like that's just like the most powerful thing for me, right? Like,
sure, when
this is undoubtedly a work of supreme art and it works on me on every level, which I think is really cool. Considering I think this movie is again like is built with well, I don't want to say it's built with women in mind because that's not fair. Because it's built with an exploration of patriarchy in mind. So I don't want to say it's not for me, but it's also possibly not for me. But it is for me. I don't know. It's for everyone. This movie's great.
I think it's for everyone except for children. Because there were parts of this movie where I was like, I think my kids would like this part. But then I'd have to be real quick with the mouse, with the pause button.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe in a few years.
Yeah, give it a little time.
Yeah.
Give it a little time. I think they need it. Well, I don't want to sell children short. I don't have kids. I don't know what they can understand and not understand in film. But just some of the violence, yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
When Joe gets his face ripped off, probably not something they want to see.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not disagreeing, but that's such a fast flash of you can't even really.
You don't even really see it until the end where they rip the sheet off of his corpse. You don't really see that his entire jaw was ripped off.
Right.
I really like that. Like, I know we're finishing up, but symbolically, that's like the literal removing of the mask, exposing him for what he is, which is just a old, weak, disgusting person. That's the thing I love about it. Like we the audience get to see what he looks like before he's been made up and powdered over and puts this like plexiglass looking armor on with these fake medals that there's no way he actually earned. We like the movie breaks the illusion for us before any of the other characters, so we know it's all bullshit, which I think is a really smart decision. Like, we see him in his weak, vulnerable state, where his mask is not like to make him look like a badass. It's because he can't fucking breathe, because he's a gross, mutated, awful person.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely was paying more attention to like the fact that they put this armor on and it has like fake muscles kind of molded into it, and it's like, you know, like you said, the fake muscles and the fake badges are basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. All right. So I think that's it for Mad Max Fury Road. I think both of our firm yeses from the Matt and Scott camp this month. That's once again. Good feeling. Great pick, Council. We really appreciate that. And now it is time for you, the audience, all of you, remember, not just our Council, all of you. It's time to vote. So there is a link in the show notes of this episode right here. You can click on it. It will take you over to our Patreon page. It is a unlocked Patreon thing, so you do not have to be a patron to vote. You can, if you just make a Patreon account, you will be able to vote. We can't open it. Like, unfortunately, you still have to make an account. You just do not have to monetarily support us to be able to vote on this. That's the best way we could do it and control the vote. So head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia, or just click the link in the show notes and head on over there. You'll find the vote and you can vote in it. And then we'll be back next week to talk about if it won. Which, I mean, I'd be shocked, but we'll see. Yeah. We'll see next
to
week.
Report that it won.
Yeah. Well, that's all we had for you guys this week. If you have any opinions on Mad Max Fury Road, please let us know. Not only vote in that poll, but let us know. You can leave a comment on the Patreon to say what you think. I think we had our lone Spider-Verse dissenter leave us a pretty great comment last month. So we love when you guys do that. So leave us a comment, or you can email us at doofmedia@gmail.com, or send us a tweet at Twitter @doofmedia.
Yeah, if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. What show do you want to talk about this week, Matt? We got so many of them.
Oh my God, we do have so many of them. So the Australian Doofers just started a new podcast for the Wildo web serial Pale. Mm-hmm. If you're not familiar with that, it's web fiction, and they are going through the web fiction as it is being written and talking about it. It's a really good story that we recommend, and it's a good podcast.
Yeah. Those two also do a show called Media MD, which you and I are going to be guesting on in a couple weeks, but they just released an episode on The Silence of the Lambs as we're recording this. So we've talked about that movie on this show in the past, and now you can hear a couple of Australians talk about it. It's like us, but with better accents.
Yeah, and actually, we're going to make them watch Terminator 2 in a couple weeks, which is why I had Terminator 2 on the brain today, I think. But yeah.
So you can find all those shows and all of our shows, all of our wonderful entertainment over at our website, doofmedia.com. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia. While you're voting, maybe pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help ensure we keep growing and keep making new content. We are a fully patron-funded organization here. All of our money comes from you guys, and we only exist because of you. So thank you to all of those who are part of this community, who are a patron of ours. We really, really do appreciate it. It's all because of you, and hope to see some new people here.
Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
Yeah, all right. We'll see you all next week for another episode. It's another patron-produced episode. This week, we are going to be reading the online web serial 1776. I don't know how you actually say it. 1776. It's like 1776, but 1776.
I say 17776. So
it's about football in the future.
Uh-huh.
We're going to read it.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.